Ah, the crickets of hypocrisy. Nothing more than a hint as to why we should be concerned about the news from the last 2 weeks. You see, this clown from Wikileaks is not the big story. The bigger story is how the people, the elitists, are treating this story, the censorship of the truth. And they can't handle the truth. And when you hear Hillary Clinton, you'll see why.
The United States strongly condemns the illegal disclosure of classified information. It puts people's lives in danger, threatens our national security, and undermines our efforts to work with other countries to solve shared problems.
The funny thing is, Hillary Clinton and the crickets of the media, when they see the First Amendment at risk, they show their true colors like the politicians. They go out and attack the source and not the real issue. Both the Republican Party and Democratic Party are guilty of this practice. Let's talk first about Julian Assange, the founder and head of Wikileaks, the new ultimate criminal number 1 in North America, as displayed at the headline in Drudge tonight. You see, John Kerry, former presidential candidate and head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, called this a reckless action which jeopardizes lives by exposing raw contemporaneous intelligence. The funny thing is with John Kerry is I don't recall the same commentary during other leaks against Republican administrations. The hypocrisy is appalling, and you hear it also in the lips and voice of Hillary Clinton and other leaders of our nation, those in both political parties. Let's wind the clock back a little bit. Back to the time when the New York Times sat there and leaked a story. Yes, Bush lets U.S. spy on callers without the courts. Not that long ago. However, the New York Times reveals a story. There are no calls for removing the New York Times website. There are no calls for criminal prosecutions outside of a few people inside the Bush administration. And there are no calls for criminal arrests of people other than low-level schmucks. Funny how hypocrisy works, isn't it, John?
People have forgotten that for 7.5 years we found weapons of mass destruction.
Whoops, John. You might be a little trigger happy there. You may want to sit there and follow gun safety procedures. Sort of like of our administration, current and past. You see, these website pictures are nothing big. They were taken from a blog, as many blogs have done, illustrating the actual posting of terrorists, not leakers, but terrorist websites on United States servers. I noticed that there was no call for retribution against those American websites which host terrorists, like Nancy Pelosi, unless they disagreed with her, in which case half of the messages and websites would be eradicated from the internet because we can't make her object. And I also noticed that there were no calls for investigations against the various hosts of the websites that had those particular terrorist sites on them from 2002 to 2008. And Mr. Smoker here comes online, screams bloody murder about it. But I never heard a word out of himself, Mr. Community Organizer, from 2002 and 2008 about the subject. So let's analyze what occurred under the Bush administration where these people were silent. Hezbollah de America Latina was a web-based site on Yahoo Groups and also Microsoft Network, which hosted commentary in Spanish about recruitment of native peoples from South and Latin America and Mexico into the Hezbollah lifestyle. Hey, here's another cute one, Hezbollah El Salvador, which actually converted probably about 4% of the population into the terrorist lifestyle. But of course, we can't say or object anything to that because Microsoft Network hosted that particular website and was actually giving money, not the terrorists, but the website, to all of the political campaigns. You see, Microsoft is a big company. Oh, here's Hezbollah, Venezuela, a terrorist organization recruiting native peoples in South America on behalf of radical Islam. You know, the sworn enemy of the Democrat and Republican parties. However, retribution against Microsoft Network for hosting this particular website, I think, can be best summed up by, well, you know, our friends. So let me get this straight. We have websites that were hosted by American-based internet providers, not unlike Amazon, which supported Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and PayPal, a division of Meg Whitman's former company, eBay, which hosted and funded WikiLeaks, supporting the leaking of information provided by American bureaucrats. However, Microsoft Network put an actual terrorist website onto their network for over 6 years with impunity. No fines, no prosecution, and no investigations. Funny how that occurred, isn't it, folks? Yet we're worried again about the threat of Hezbollah and the drug dealers from the South. Yahoo, where I happen to host my website, I might add, also hosted Hezbollah, and they're treated with impunity. Now they're part of Microsoft, so now they could basically sit there and get away with murder. But when you look at a company like WikiLeaks, a non-profit organization which simply sits there and publishes information due to the transgressions of incompetent American security procedures, you have to start asking yourself, what is the purpose of going after them full bore and ignoring the people who are responsible? You got to draw a blank. The truth is, the blank is not hard to draw. Both political parties have an interest in keeping and maintaining fear, so the American public is terrified, however, doing nothing to actually stifle and suppress the terror by prosecuting the guilty parties. It's called hypocrisy of the first degree. The other party is they're so politically correct, they are yellow-bellied, lying dirtbag scum. Both political parties, Republican, Democrat, be it Jim DeMint, be it Nancy Pelosi, be it Harry Reid or Mitch McConnell, both have a yellow streak so wide, so broad, and so deep that not only when they go to urinate standing up, it's yellow, they sit there and eat anything yellow in the world. They love the crickets. They want the American people to be sheeple. But they're yellow-bellied liars. They want to scare you into something you're not ready to deal with and want you to ignore the truth. So embrace the red, white, and blue. Enjoy the Christmas holidays. But I warn you now, hypocrisy comes in the colors of red, white, and blue, as well as yellow and blank white. The administration, the media, and everyone involved will sit there and proclaim hypocrisy as their calling to life. The New York Times, Washington Post, and others have never been forced off the internet for their actions or their words. However, WikiLeaks was attacked because they dared to assault the regime. Let that sink in, because there's not necessarily a new order, but an expanded one coming into town.